Hey guys, it's Sam. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. I'm the creator of fantasy adventure manga Yield Treehouse, and on my channel, I'm trying to document my journey to making this story something big. And today, I wanted to break down something that I've done a few times before on the channel, which is how I go from thumbnails to script to storyboard. And I'm going to use chapter 25, which is the chapter I've recently been working on, to show you kind of how I do this and advice if you want to make your own manga and you're trying to figure out how to do these planning stages until you get to a final product. Hopefully this video could be of some use to you. Before we get started, if you want to read my work, because it's one thing to try and teach everyone how to do something, it's another thing to actually show what you've done, you can read Yield Treehouse at Global Comics or at yieldtreehouse.com, and the link is in the description. Check it out. If you've been craving like an epic fantasy adventure, I think you'll like the story. I've been told it's like Black Clover or Hunter x Hunter, etc. So check it out. Okay, so let's just get into it. I'm going to be moving around a lot because this is a fairly new setup and it's not perfect. So just excuse me. First, let's start with the thumbnails, okay? This book that I have is my very messy thumbnail sketchbook. So I do all of my thumbnails analog style. Very rarely do I use digital for thumbnails. I did in the last chapter, but I like the tactile feel of using a sketchbook to do my thumbnails. And this chapter was no different. For me, thumbnails, the goal overall is just to get a few things. One, and let's put this a little more so you can see. There we go. One is the page layout. I want to get the paneling in the page layouts looking, or at least have a general basic idea of how I want to structure each individual page. And then I want to frame the composition for the characters. Now, as you can see on this thumbnail, it's very sloppy. Like, it's just like scribbles. But the point is not to fully draw characters or backgrounds or anything on these thumbnails. The point is to get it to a fidelity where you can start to see how that structure is going to take shape. And most importantly, for me, in my opinion, about this stage is to see how your two pages look together and also bubble placement. So at this stage, I like to make sure that the character dialogue and the bubbles are, placed in a way where I won't have script crammed in a bubble and a bubble crammed somewhere on the page. So I skipped a step. Let's rewind. Before the thumbnailing, I write the script. One of the most important things for me when it comes to script writing for my manga is to make sure that I have an idea of each beat. And what I mean by that is, like, in storytelling, stories have a rhythm. There is sort of like a pacing to your beginning, your middle, and your end. And the rhythm of that is called a beat. And you can have emotional beats, you can have comedy beats, you can have various different types of beats. But that rhythm of, beginning, middle, end, whether it's beginning, middle, end of a joke, beginning, middle, end of a dramatic scene, that is what your beat is. So for me, for every chapter that I do, roughly my chapters are somewhere around 18 to 19 or so pages. So I always make sure that I have my beginning, middle, and end for the chapter, so I have this overarching structure for the beats. So for this chapter, for chapter 25, I broke it down into 3 major events, as you can see here: Ender of CS Argument, Ender SR Ludo Clash, and Fortress's Lab. These are all of the 3 major things that happen in this chapter in the story. And so from here, I know I'm going to break it down into, okay, what happens in the Ender of CS Argument? And how does that transition into Ender and SR Ludo clashing? And how does that go into them going into Fortress's Lab? I think it's really important to have goals for each chapter. It doesn't have to be like a humongous, narrative shifting goal, but your characters should always be working towards something in a chapter so that readers can feel like things are moving, like something's happening. If you don't do this, you might wind up in a situation where your readers will feel like, well, things seem like they're happening, but it doesn't really feel like it. And you don't want to make people feel like they're wasting their time. So after I kind of create my 3 beats, what I do next is I go page by page. And this sounds really tedious, but I think it's really necessary to keep the story feeling organized. I go page by page, panel by panel. I put my cues, my shots, and then I write the script. Now, at the same time as I'm doing this, this is where I'm doing my thumbnailing. So if we just take an example from the very first page, I think the thumbnail for that is, it is here. So Again, very crudely drawn. But so this page right here, this thumbnail for this page, we start with an establishing shot of Glory Peak mountain range. So you can see, use your vivid imagination. The very first panel is a mountain range. And then panel 2, we have a shot of the snowy ground with a black hole forming underneath. That's this panel. And I do this at the same time because sometimes when I'm going back to my script, if I don't have thumbnails, sometimes I don't remember what the hell I was talking about or what the hell I wanted to do. So for me, it's important to do these thumbnails at the same time. And then panel 3, black clawed hand bursts out of the ground. Page turner. So that tells me that I need to make this look intriguing and make the reader want to turn the page. So I go through for every single page. And like I said, each of my chapters is somewhere from, you could say, 18 to 19, sometimes 20 pages. I go through for every page and I do that. Now, it sounds tedious. It sounds like it takes a long time, but I promise you this is what's going to make your story feel like it's flowing, and it's going to create a narrative sense that readers can actually follow. So once I do that, I've done my thumbnails, I've written all of my script out. The next thing that I do is I take those thumbnails and I take this script and I get it here. I get it onto my tablet for my storyboards. This is the fun part. This is the part that we all love, is the storyboarding. So as I said, once I get my thumbnails done and I am ready for storyboarding, I basically take those very crude, rudimentary pages that I drew in my book and I, put them onto Clip Studio, and now is the time where I give them some better sensible look. So if we take the first page that I showed you earlier, for example, let me just resize this and zoom in here and grab my book again. If we take that first page that I showed, for example, of Glory Peak, this page right here, and if you see the recording, you can see it's the top panel. You see now it looks a lot more like a mountain. We see that black hole that was in my notes, and then we see the hand bursting out of the ground. So it's the same thing that I saw in my head, but except now I get to actually draw it in a way that looks pleasing to the eye. So let's I guess I can break down how I approach storyboarding, because one of the things, I don't know if you have this feeling, but one of the things that always interested me when I first started making manga is, well, how much do you draw in a storyboard? And I've seen a lot of different mangaka draw their storyboards many different ways, but it was an interview from Hiro Mashima that kind of informed how I approach it, in which he was referring to how he did storyboards for Ringmaster, which is his first work. And he said that he used the storyboard to practice anatomy, to practice, drawing clothing, hair, backgrounds, to get better. He wanted to make sure that he can improve on his drawing skills. So he used the storyboard phase to kind of improve on his drawing skills. And since I saw that interview, I decided that that's what I was going to do too. So while you may see people who do storyboards and they're very sketchy or very sloppy, the figures are stick figures, and you may say, I could do that. I don't need to fully define the characters. If that works for you, absolutely do that. But for me in particular, I need to have a pretty reasonably high fidelity in my storyboards, because this helps me practice my art fundamentals. So it's up to you. Do it how you do it. See what works for you. But this way has been working for me a lot. So let's look at the important parts of one of the pages, like this page, for example, that I'm on right now. So there is a couple of things that I do when I'm storyboarding. The first thing is the page layout that I decided that I'm going to use in my thumbnails. I indicate that with just some crude lines with the blue layer color effect here. I don't factor in my margins yet, because the goal here is that I'm just drawing the full scene out. I'm not too concerned with fitting them into the correct margins yet. That for me comes during the inking phase, which is not what this video is about. So once I get the general layout set up, I will fill in my characters first. Now you may say, Fifi, Sam, whatever you have come to know me as on the internet, why are there so many colors? What is up with that? Because some people's storyboards are just black, right? There's a couple of reasons for me. One is the way that I sketch sometimes can get really sloppy. So I want to be able to discern the different parts of the page. I want to be able to discern the characters from the background, from the effects, from the dialogue, from the lettering. And the way that I found that works best for me is to color code everything. So my characters will be blue, my backgrounds will be purple, the effects will be pink or orange. Sometimes I'm not very consistent with that. And the dialogue bubbles will be orange. The key for me in this stage is to prioritize, and some people may cringe a little bit at this, but just hear me out. The priority for me here is the dialogue bubbles. I want to make sure that I am not going to put myself in a situation where they're crammed somewhere on either side of the page where people can't read them. I want to make sure that the reading direction and the reading flow is very sensible. My manga is right to left, so I want it to feel very natural to go from this bubble to this bubble to this one. If you can't see my hand, like, you know, maybe hopefully the video discerns like what I'm doing, but I want the readability, the flow to feel very natural. And I don't always get it right, but I do think I'm getting better at that. Okay. And then the next thing that I do is fill in my backgrounds, which I tend to maintain a fairly low fidelity on the backgrounds in the beginning, just enough to get the perspective down. And then I do whatever effects, like for example, Ender's got this scar that has things coming out of it, or magic energy, whatever you want to call it. So I make sure that I kind of give myself a cue that, hey, like this is going to be something that you put some effects on when you're inking. That is this pink part here. And once I get let's move that back. Once I get the dialogue and everything, I hide that folder so I can focus on the artwork then. And this gives me a really good starting point for when I'm doing the inking stage. I think this is good enough. When I go in and ink, what I'll do is I'll turn the opacity down on these layers. I'll remove the background, turn the opacity down, and then I'll just ink over that. So that's kind of how I do my storyboards. And there are different considerations for different parts of the storyboard, but that's just kind of like a high level of how I approach it. I think it's really important to remember that the storyboard is supposed to help you like finalize the ideas from the scripting and the thumbnails. It's supposed to be something that is kind of like the most refined right before you get to inking. This is still the stage where you can make a lot of changes to your script and your composition, but you want it to be like almost there. So take a lot of time for this stage for storyboarding, because it's where you can catch where things don't read well. It's where you can maybe add, like, actually just a few hours ago during brunch with my editor, I realized that we should add an additional page in this chapter. And thankfully, I can do that because of the way that I do storyboards. So we're going to pause right here, and I'm actually going to drop in some footage of me going to check out Wacom's Move Ink tablet a few days ago, and wanted to kind of give some of my thoughts about this device because I love my desk. As you can see, it has all the stuff that I love on it, and this is not even a half of it. Like, if I move this camera up, you can see some more things, and it just goes on and on and on and on. But anyway, I want to be able to sometimes move out of this desk. I don't want to be glued here, in other words. So I want something portable, but still feels quality, like my Wacom tablet here. So I went to go check it out, and let's see what I thought about it. So I'm heading to a tech district now in order to go check out the Move Ink from Wacom, which I have been eyeballing for quite some time. When I'm storyboarding and thumbnailing, I take that as one of the only times that I could actually get out and work outside, because precision is not necessary. So I don't need to have my large screen. So I want to find something that's portable that I can, like, you know, work at a coffee shop or sit on my bed or just draw and storyboard wherever I'd like. And this Move Ink is very enticing because supposedly it's just like one of the larger Wacom tablets. So I had seen it, and I see a lot of Japanese mangaka that I follow on social media who've been raving about it. And of course, I'm getting FOMO, so I'm going to check it out. Sidebar, this is the port oak, you guys. This tree is literally the port oak. Anyway, so I got into the store that sells it. My cameraman is very focused on the right things, as you can tell. Overall, the device feels very similar to my Cintiq that I work on. It's just smaller. The Pro Pen 3, while it's kind of thin and I didn't initially like it, I'm learning to grow accustomed to it, and the Move Ink does feel very responsive, almost no different from my desktop tablet, which was very surprising. It registers every single stroke. The pressure sensitivity is good. It has tilt. And I'd say for the portable work that I'd like to do, I think this is perfect. So I'm probably going to go ahead and get this so that I can remove myself from my desk at some point. So guys, that's about it for today's video on thumbnailing, storyboarding, and how I storyboard a chapter. I hope it was helpful. I hope maybe you learned something or just had something to play in the background if you're working on your own comic too. My goal here is to try to show more about the production side of manga as I'm learning it and as I'm getting better. I think our community as a whole could be better served if more people show how they do what they do, and especially because my goal eventually is for my story, Yule Treehouse, to really, gain some steam. I want to touch people globally with this story, and the only way to do that is by putting myself out there. So hopefully this is something that's of interest to you. If you would like to check out Yule Treehouse, the links are in the description below. And if you'd like to support my overall journey towards making this a thing, you can join Patreon. I put a lot of behind the scenes stuff in there if that's interesting to you. And thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye.